We're going to rock and roll right now. It's easy to go green. Welcome to our webinar, and thank you for being patient with us while we got all the connections lined up. It's easy to go green and make green. Let me introduce you to the men in my life. You can see on my screen, this is my son, Max, and my husband, Hot Rod, and they look a lot alike. They are also connected in one other significant way. If you were to slice into either one of them, they would bleed green. These two are the greenest guys I know. And so as I thought about the opportunities to go green, to make money in the energy efficiency world, to do good things for the planet, and just be a responsible Earth citizen, I went to my go-to guys, Max Rohr and Hot Rod Rohr. Welcome, guys.
Thanks for having me.
Hey, I would like you to take a minute and introduce yourselves. Other than being married to me, Hot Rod, why don't you share why you're such an expert on green? Tell us some of the salient points of your career and how it is that you came to be the greenest guy I know.
Well, I started working with my father, who was a plumbing contractor back in Orchard Park, New York, outside of Buffalo, New York. And he was also the local neighborhood handyman. He would do welding projects. We lived in kind of a farm community out there, so he would help work on the tractors and the equipment for the local neighbor farmers and stuff, so I learned a little bit about that too. So I did that right up until I got out of high school, and then I kind of got the traveling bug and moved out to Utah, ski bombing.
Which is where I met you.
Yeah. And then did a few years doing that, and then I got a job on a maintenance department at one of the ski resorts out there, and working on it was a brand new resort. Snowbird was just opening up in those days outside of Salt Lake, Utah. So I got on board there and worked on the boilers and helped maintain that equipment and as it was being built and stuff like that. And then from there went over to Park City, Utah in 1978, and that's where we started our own business. A partner of mine from a neighbor, actually, one of the farm neighbors from Orchard Park, New York, and I started a company called Hot Rod and Yachts, Yachts being his last name, like the Dr. Seuss character. So the two of us started a little business, and we did a lot of resort maintenance work. So we'd work on the restaurant equipment and different things around the resort area there in Park City. And then we did that right up until we moved to Missouri, 17 years ago, I guess. And when I got here, I just kind of focused a little bit more and just did solar and radiant heat installations. I got out of the plumbing and that type of work, and just kind of, since I was a one-man show, I just focused on solar and radiant. And that, of course, is about, when the green movement started getting some steam and stuff. So we got in on the front end of that as far as the solar and some of the stuff that we had been doing that for years. In fact, our first house we built in, 82 or 85, whenever that was, we had solar on it back in those days. So we've been kind of working with alternate energy systems pretty much all our lives on our different homes that we've lived in. So that's kind
of... Well, it's always like we have some kind of experiment going on. I'll come home and there's a new solar panel or there's a new alternative heat source going on. So it seems like you've made a workshop out of every home that we've lived in.
Yeah, pretty much. And then, as we find equipment that we either, get scratch and dents or stuff that people have taken off their homes because they had to put a new roof on or something like that, we always find, good deals. So then it makes it easy to just kind of tinker and play around with it, so it's not so expensive to get the equipment. And then currently I work for a company called Caleffi, which is an Italian company, and we manufacture components for hydronic and radiant heat systems and also for solar systems. And I go travel around doing the training for them. So I'm training reps and dealers as well as installers on how to put solar and hydronic components in. So that's kind of, that's what I do now. So
that's a great introduction. Is there anything that, like any moment or any experience that you had that makes you so interested in green as a philosophy? I mean, what made you become aware of energy efficiency?
I don't know what first triggered it. I mean, I've always been interested in the sun and how that works. I mean, the first home we built in Utah was a passive home, so the whole front of it was glass, so we got a lot of passive energy that way, and it just kept building from that. I said, well, if it's that simple, to let the sunshine in your windows, certainly we can get some hot water and do some other things with it, and it just kept building from there. And having the background in the mechanical trades, it made sense since you're already a plumber, how to move water and fluids through pipes, so it just kind of all kept coming together, and it just always, kept current on it, always read about it, and, the solar industry specifically has been up and down, but, usually based around the incentive programs and stuff whenever there's incentive programs going, or the fuel costs are real high, or we have a fuel embargo like we did years ago. That's what drives people towards solar, and then it seems to kind of fade away when the prices come down like they have now again with natural gas, and the rebates start to dry up. So that kind of, we just always kind of tracked with that industry too.
Well, thank you for sharing your story. And how about you, Max? I mean, you were born into this Solar Wizards family, into the family, and tell us about your history and why green really resonates with you.
So I also started out as a contractor with my dad. So
son of a plumber?
Yeah,
son
so
of a son
I
of a
would
plumber?
go and help my dad mostly when I was in high school, on weekends, and then when I was over summer vacation and that type of thing, and I continued to do that through college when I would come back. Then right after college, I had an incredible opportunity to go work for Calefi at their headquarters in Italy. So that was really fascinating because in Europe, green is the industry standard. It's not something that a handful of the population does because they feel like it's a important thing for them personally. Those are the mandates, and that is just where the European Union, I guess specifically, has decided that this isn't going to be some niche thing for the Europeans. So that was really fun to be able to kind of live in that environment for a while and see where green is outside of the United States.
So you don't have to sell people on going green there. That is the standard.
Yeah, and in all sorts of different aspects, but especially with energy, just because the fuel prices are so high, and they've just decided that that's the way that they're going to run their countries over there. So it was fun because everything is kind of mandated green, and then beyond that, the battle is kind of for who can be the most green instead of just trying to sell green in general.
Cool.
So then after that, I went to work for a wholesaler in Chicago, Able Distributors, and they do a lot of really cool projects with geothermal and solar and these really interesting combination systems that provide just really great energy efficiency obviously beyond the mandate of what is code or anything like that, just really progressive systems in the Chicago area. So I did the marketing and training there, which was a good opportunity as well because I had to learn how to market green to our contractors and then also train people to kind of get them to break their habits on why this type of pump is better to use or this type of boiler, because there's a lot of kind of old habits that some die harder than others in the trades. So that it was a good exercise in really putting together a persuasive argument for why green is important for multiple different reasons.
Oh, cool. I'm going to ask you to expand on that in a minute, but then you were in Chicago, and now?
And then I started with Shamrock Sales, and we're a manufacturer's rep firm in the state of Colorado, in the Denver area, and I live up in the mountains in Silverthorne. And what I do is outside sales for them, so we represent a bunch of different hydronic-specific heating lines, and I go to wholesalers and contractors and try and educate them on the new products that we have and try and get people to buy green products.
Woohoo! And it's fun because you also represent Calefi products.
They do.
So
yeah.
there you are with the opportunity to work with your dad, and all three of us write for Plumbing, Heating, Cooling News, which is kind of fun. So I like to think of us as the first family of the radiant and solar industry, or at least that makes me feel pretty cool about it. Well, I couldn't pick two better guys to talk about green today, and I want to talk about green in two basic ways. One is how to go green. What is green? What are the opportunities to go green? Why would you want to go green in terms of your personal life and your business life? And then the second general topic of conversation I want to have today is, where's the money? Are there opportunities to make money? You know, this is a big promise that there are jobs in the green industry. Is that true? And if so, what are they? So let's start with going green. There are all kinds of definitions of green. So Hot Rod and Max, what is, how would you define green? And I know this is kind of a can of worms, but who wants to take a swing at it first?
I think it's just lessening your impact on the planet. You know, everything you do, whether it's driving your car or you know, the energy required to heat your home or cook your meals or anything you do, just the way you move about and get from place to place is all part of being green. So I mean, you can pick any part or include all of them. I mean, even the way you the food you eat. You know, if something that's grown locally, to me seems like a green thing to do as opposed to having food brought in from California. When I just picked up a watermelon that was grown, you know, 50 miles from our home this morning. So that's, to me, that's all. It's all part of the green movement.
I like that. That's a nice definition because, you know, there's arguments about what is green and the pluses and minuses of any green initiative. But to lessen your impact on the planet is a nice, simple approach. What do you think, Max?
That's actually kind of a really similar definition that I had written down, that just less of an energy or environmental impact than whatever the conventional alternative is covers green, I think, most of the time. And then taking the additional steps to look at what the footprint of what you're buying is. So if it's like the watermelon example, that if you can think globally and act locally is kind of one of the sayings that people say all the time in the green industry, but to think on a global scale but then act locally as far as spending your dollars on at a local coffee shop or something like that instead of going to Starbucks, because so much more of that goes into the local environment and then helps, you know, promote business where you are as well, instead of you know, the corporate structure all over the rest of the world.
And do you mean that too, like that watermelon that comes from California, then we had to add the fuel cost of actually getting it here? Is that the idea of if we have to move something less times that we're going to have some energy savings there? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, and then that's the just kind of whole radius of impact too. So while in the saying that we were taught in school, the recycle, reduce, reuse, the one that I think is absolutely most important is just to reduce the amount of products that you use, because to recycle something is still a pretty energy intensive process, because unlike years ago, we don't take the milk bottles and wash them out and reuse them, that if you buy a bottle of beer or something like that, well, you may take that, you may go the additional steps to take that bottle to a recycling center and you put it with just the brown glass and that type of thing, but they actually have to break all that glass and melt it and redo that entire process. So you're really just providing them with the raw materials, but there's all of that transportation still associated with it on top of the manufacturing process, which is expensive as well from an energy standpoint.
It can be a little overwhelming as you describe it like this. Now, Max, I know one of the experiences you had was to help one of the companies you worked with create a green initiative at the company itself. Describe to us what it would take to go green. I think I even have an article on this, but talk to us about that a little bit.
So definitely there are situations where people are used to whatever they've done for all these years, as far as, you know, all trash goes into one bin and then that goes to the dumpster, and that's fine, and that's, you know, what has just been a part of society for so long.
Kind of sounds like how I grew up.
So the thing that is most helpful with a recycling program or a green initiative, if you're trying to do that at your company or your house or your dorm complex or whatever the case may be, is start with something that has some mutual benefit. So if your idea is that you want to start a green program, but what you want to do is something that really requires people to go way out of the norm to do something that they don't see any benefit in, that's probably not going to be the easiest strategy. So if you start with something that has mutual benefits, like with the program that we did, we actually split the trash and then we had a separate bin for just paper and cardboard. and we had that paper and cardboard. We have a big trash compactor that we used, and then we ended up selling the paper and the cardboard. So that was stuff that we were just throwing out that we then we had a little, I mean, it wasn't much, but a little bit of income from the paper and cardboard that was just going in the dumpster. And then the additional thing that I didn't even think of at the beginning of the program is that we really reduced the size of the dumpster that we needed at the shop. So then we were saving money by not having that many yards of trash to be.
Okay, so you can bribe some good behavior. Now, Hot Rod, I know that for years and years you've always saved scrap, and a lot of the folks who listen to this webinar or are going to listen to the podcast are going to be saving scrap. So that's a recycling program right there that makes some sense and is something that your employees could help participate in, right?
Yeah, now they've even made it easier. I think they've got an iScrap app that you can get for your phone that you can keep an eye on the metal prices. So if you want to just keep your cans or your copper or whatever product you have until the price is high, you can kind of play around and watch that too. So that's another thing that they've made easier with technology and stuff. So
that's a really good idea. Hey, Max, I know we were talking right before we got on the phone that you can get some guidelines on how to start an office recycling program. What do you think of this little article here? Is this a service?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, any creative ideas for incentives, or if you want to put together a little game within the office to see which department can divert the most amount of waste to recycling or something like that is helpful. Anything that requires a little bit of competition for whatever it might be, a pizza party or something like that, gets people that are competitive but maybe not green involved, so that's beneficial to everybody.
All right, so I think this is kind of fun. Could we just reduce the impact? And some of the reasons for going green is certainly to save money. What other reasons for going green really light a fire under you guys?
Well, I mean, it's the awareness that if everybody would do it, it would just save on resource and stuff like that. It'd just be a little saner place to be, I think.
Any thoughts, Max? Like, how do you communicate why going green is really an issue? In Europe, like you said, it's the standard. Fuel prices are a lot higher. How do we entice people to see this as a relevant movement?
Well, I mean, from a politics standpoint, that the decision makers at that point need to either decide from a policy level that this is as important as the Europeans and everywhere else in the world seem to think it is. But in the U.S., we have 5% of the world's population, but we use 25% of the commercial energy in the entire world. So I think it's a little bit tougher sell here because we spend so much time kind of acquiring energy from all over the world that we've had it really easy. So compared to Italy or something like that, where gas has just been $6 or $8 a gallon for the last 5 years, that they have to pay more attention because they just couldn't afford to drive their cars around if they, if everybody had a Hummer H2 or something like that. So there's the financial side of it that we've just had it really easy for a while. So I would say that's why we aren't as green as some of the other countries.
I hear you on that. So speaking of green and all those fun puns that we could do with that, one of the ways that you can be encouraged to go green is that you can save a little money and you can do good for the planet. But money savings is one reason to go green. And so we put a couple of resources together, Hot Rod and Max and I. Max, what do you think of the Daily Green as a personal resource for learning more about the green movement?
So the Daily Green's a pretty good website that I think, goodhousekeeping.com put it together. And it's definitely consumer based. They're not going to tell you about a new pump or boiler or control system or anything like that. But they're really just kind of quick hits in that tips and advice tab up on the top there. I think every day they've got some little green tip, and they're usually pretty easy to actually put into use in your house. And like this one, it's not anything super technical, but it gives you just a new idea, and it's pretty all-encompassing as far as different things in your house. So it's not always about heating and cooling. Sometimes it's about, anything else, clothing or.
That's funny that of all days it would get an air conditioner, a window banger.
Which isn't really. Yeah, and that's the other thing is the Daily Green is good, but that's, in this case, the industry people are probably like, well, that's really the least energy.
Not as green. Well, let's go to the non-industry or the non-consumer. Oh, that's not the word I'm looking for. Let's go to the pro side of things. Hot Rod, I see you go to this website every day. Now, this is a forum that's primarily for contractors, but I know a lot of homeowners go here too. Why do you think heatinghelp.com might be a good resource for folks who want to expand their understanding of all things green?
Well, it just gives them access to contractors that are out there doing it and installing it and that are keeping up to date with the current products. But for a contractor-to-contractor site, you can talk about what doesn't work too. Like, don't bother going this way or going that way or trying this because this is what we found. So it's just a really instant, access to that type of information that you don't have to wait for a letter to come through or wait for somebody else to try. You've got this database of thousands of people that are out there in all different places of the country. Some are doing heating when some are doing air conditioning down in the south or out west. So there's always a resource there for whatever topic that you need to talk about or get some information on. So it's it's the people that are kind of walking the walk, so to speak.
This is a fun resource. Even if you aren't a contractor, a lot of non-professionals go here because this is where you're going to get some pretty cutting-edge information and some basic over-the-fence chatter. That's for sure. Hey, let's move now from going green personally and maybe in your business to where the green opportunities might be. And actually, heatinghelp.com is kind of a good springboard for that because there are guys who participate in this community who are underlining the energy efficient aspect of their business. Let's talk about what the opportunities really are. And let's go contractor specific for a moment, and then maybe we could go even broader in terms of green opportunities across the planet. But Hot Rod, why don't you start in terms of what contractors can do to differentiate themselves and to capture this green niche in such a way that it may be lucrative for them?
Well, yeah, it certainly depends on what kind of contracting business you're in. If you're already in like a trades type of business like an HVAC or plumbing and heating or something mechanical like that, solar hot water systems makes a lot of sense. Certainly on commercial buildings, there's a big market for that right now. The residential side is kind of drying up a little bit because of the fuel prices, the gas prices, natural gas is down kind of low again. But on big buildings where they use a lot of energy, that's certainly like prisons and restaurants and water parks and facilities like that are certainly looking at solar thermal for some of the heating loads. So that would probably be one of the bigger things on the contractor side. The other thing is anything to do like energy audits, where you would go to a customer's house and you would look at all their equipment and make recommendations where they could maybe, put a little more insulation in or put a little more sophisticated thermostat on the wall that would do some energy monitoring for them or give them alerts when they're on the road, via Wi-Fi signal. Max can talk about that a little bit more, but those are probably two of the biggest right now is energy audits, just, taking an existing home and showing them little things they can do. It could be as simple as some weather stripping that could save them, $10 or $15 a month on their fuel cost, and is, involved as putting a solar system on the roof either for hot water or for electric. So I think those are probably the main things that you see in magazines. In fact, all these websites you're going to, everyone has a solar panel somewhere on the site because that's definitely what people are thinking about right now is generating the power as close to where you're using it instead of a coal-fired plant 100 miles from your home. Why not generate some of your electricity right on your rooftop and then put it all on the grid that everybody can use it?
Okay, well, let me interrupt you a second. Let's go to a couple of the magazines that I know you frequent all the time. I've got Green Builder and Solar Pro. I know that you've learned a lot from magazines and conventions, going to learn. What are some resources that if I wanted to get into the green aspect, if I wanted to create a significant, relevant green marketing approach to my business, talk to me about some of the resources that you really like.
Well, yeah, I mean, any of the magazines that, have the word green in them certainly are going to have, experts like columnists and people that'll talk about how to, what kind of business you should be looking at, how to market it, where your customers are, how you go about setting the price for your service and stuff like that. So, the Green Builder is good for builders that are doing more remodeling than new home construction these days. So taking an existing home and showing people how they can make it more energy efficient. So if you're on the building side of it, but also where you can find interesting products. It could be paint, it could be, new furniture, or Energy Star appliances or stuff like that. So Green Builder is kind of, that's what I think makes the country run, is the building industry. When the home building industry is off, is everybody's out of work. People aren't buying tools, they're not buying trucks and stuff. So they've learned, the Green Builder magazine learned how to adapt to the times where there aren't a lot of new construction, big subdivisions and homes going in. Well, how do we keep the builders busy? What could a builder be doing if he's not building a new home in subdivisions like they used to? So that's good for that. And then the other ones, there's a magazine, I think, for any topic you could think out there, whether it's, floor and wall covering to, I got one that I get this cleaning services, and Solar Pro is one that we get. So you can really focus in on whatever niche that you think you want to pursue or learn more about by going to the, and of course all the magazines now have chat rooms, so you can go online and talk to people in real time as far as questions on whatever you want to drill down on.
Discussions. All right. So Max, what do you think as far as opportunities in the energy efficient sector?
So I think that there are definitely people out there that just want to be green for the sake of being green, and they want to have solar panels on their house so they can start conversations with their neighbors, and they're just really into that. So that's great, but that's not as big a market as you would like as a contractor. I don't know if that would be sustainable as a 10-truck shop or something like that in a mid-major sized city or something like that. So one of the things that's cool about green energy is in most cases it's more comfortable to the end user. So if you have in a house right now, let's say you have an old cast iron boiler that's just an on and off boiler, and when it starts in winter it sounds like a freight train, and then the pumps are really noisy because they're all too big, and you have the throughout your house you have the creaking of the pipes when you start heating, or your baseboard or something like that. So those just happen to be things that are caused by kind of inefficient equipment. So if you replaced that same system with a modulating condensing boiler, what you get is a slow, it's like driving a car with an on and off switch or driving a car with a gas pedal. So you get as much energy as you need, and the boiler stays on longer, so there's less wear and tear on the boiler, and you're getting a steady supply of energy instead of just on, off. So that's where you get the thermal noise of the creaking of your baseboard or something like that, is because you're getting a thermal shock over and over again with the on-off boiler, where with the modulating boiler you get a steady stream of energy, so it's not as noisy.
Okay, so that got a little technical for me, but what you're saying is that just replacing the old and clunky is a good indication that you might be able to save some energy.
Well, but what I was getting at is that it makes it a more comfortable home for the homeowner. So while it is from just a dollar-to-dollar energy standpoint better to go with the green stuff, so you may be able to sell somebody on that side of it, the best heating systems are heating systems that you don't hear or feel or see. So the green systems are actually better at doing that than the conventional energy inefficient type systems.
Okay, so I get it. What you're saying is that the actual energy savings may not be enough to get a lot of homeowners to jump on the green bandwagon, but the comfortable, the comfort of those systems is what we're going to look for in terms of getting more folks to upgrade their equipment.
So you could approach it like, okay, so here, Mr. or Mrs. Homeowner, this is what you have right now. So what I'd like to do is install a system that you don't hear the pumps kick on, because they're these really energy efficient pumps that don't make a lot of noise, and you don't hear the boiler because it's going to be at a low modulation, so you're not going to hear your heating system as much as you do now. And oh, by the way, you may save 40% on your propane bill or something like that.
I think that makes a ton of sense. You know, as we're talking about the contracting industry, what tip could you give for someone who wants to add a green element, but a lot of the technology is going way over their head? Are there certain things that you could offer as part of a standard plumbing package or HVAC package that are really easy to incorporate if you're intimidated by some of the more sophisticated elements of our industry? Does that question make sense?
Yeah, do you want me to start?
What do you think, H?
Yeah, go ahead.
So one of the things that there have been some really significant improvements, I feel like, in the last couple years is from the control side of things, so the thermostats in your home.
Okay.
There are a lot of cool options out there now that you can monitor through the internet, either through your smartphone or just from a web browser. So they've made these different products that are on the market now really, really user-friendly. And what they found with one of the companies is just by running a program as far as having your thermostat set back when you're at work or when you're on vacation or something like that, that in over the whole industry that people are saving 26% just because they're controlling it better and they're not using energy when they don't need to be.
Oh, that's exactly what I had in mind. So that's a simple way that you could green up your offerings without, feeling intimidated by the whole slew of opportunities available with this cutting-edge technology.
One of the things to be careful with that is it depends on what you're heating with. So if you're running a program on your thermostat and you have a forced air system, you can set it back a little bit more than you want to if you have radiant floor heat, for example, in your house. You don't want to set that back more than maybe 1 or 2 degrees because then it's a little bit slower moving in just the nature of the heat. So
because forced air is going to come on and off, but the radiant is going to have to heat up and cool down.
So it's actually less efficient if you set back your radiant floor thermostat 10 degrees when you're at work, because then it just takes that much more time to bring it back. And so.
Good tip. What do you think, H? What are some ways that you could go green if you're a little intimidated by, jumping in with both feet in the green industries? How could you just dip your toe in the water?
Well, yeah, I agree with Max. That's the simplest one that has the best bang for the bucks is, a smarter thermostat on the house, one that you can look at if you're on the road somewhere and say, oh gosh, I forgot to turn my thermostat down. I'm going to be gone all week with these new Wi-Fi thermostats. You can do that from your phone.
That's true.
Your iPhone and say, gosh, what did I leave my thermostat? It'll show you a thermostat setting, and you can change it right from the road. So that's, and the cost, we're talking probably, what, Max, under $200 installed for something like that. So it's not a big, expensive thing. In fact, didn't Apple, some of the designers at Apple come out with one, it's called was it the Nest thermostat or something like that?
Yeah, that's the Nest. And the Nest is pretty cool that it learns what your occupancy habits are, basically. So you can walk up and turn it up and turn it down, and it learns your schedule. But then I believe it also has like an optical sensor, so it knows when the lights in a room are off, and if it knows that the lights are off at these times, then it turns it back a couple of degrees. And then the other major thermostat out there is Ecobee, which is one of the lines that Shamrock Sales represents, and that's a really cool thermostat too. And we've had it as a line for a couple months now. But just really, really great, especially for home and for commercial use too. So in some of the applications, you can hook up the thermostat in, let's say, a Taco Bell, and you can monitor it from anywhere. And then you can also hook up sensors. So if equipment fails, or in the Taco Bell example, if the freezer starts to warm up because something broke, you know about it right away. So it's really helpful from a preventative maintenance side of things too.
Well, let's go a little bit broader on these opportunities to go green and talk about energy auditing, because energy auditing really involves a lot of different industries and a lot of ways different people can play in the green industry. Certainly, green is all about how you live your life, and the home is going to be a central element of that, the home or your office building. So I've heard a lot about energy audits. I have clients who do energy audits, and frankly, it's a little confusing as to where the value is, how long an energy audit should take, do you have to pay for one? Why don't you give us some thoughts on energy audits, who does them, what one would pay for, and what's the benefit of having an energy audit done, maybe from the homeowner's perspective as well as a contractor's perspective. So that's a broad question. Who wants to jump in?
I can start.
Bueller? Okay.
So there are actually a lot of different either states or municipalities that offer, and it's usually, I guess, through the utility company that they'll offer energy audits to come out to your house, and they're usually really inexpensive. I think there's I forget where in Colorado, but for $50 somebody will come out and do a walk around your building with a thermal camera, which sees just kind of how leaky the envelope of your building is, and then they may go through and count up the watts of the lights that you have in your house or something like that. Usually the utility company audits are a little on the basic side just because it's almost a free service.
Now, just to interrupt you, is this on the screen? This is a thermal camera shot, right? So they're going to be able to tell the heat. That baby's giving off some heat, I take it. But that's what you mean by using a thermal camera. They'll be able to see the heat loss in your house, for instance?
Yeah, so in the winter, if you sit outside of a building, you can see where the heat is basically pouring out of the house, even if it's not an opening. If there's just no insulation, you can see where you want to insulate the envelope of the house as a start. And then I think where for more for profit, if you're a contractor and you want to do an energy audit, I think that the utility company ones are usually on the basic side, and an important thing is that 50 to 70% of a home's energy use is through the heating and cooling side of things. So while it's great to insulate, and that should probably in 90% of the cases be where you should start, your boiler room is really the joke is that after somebody does an energy audit, that they come in and stand on the 2 horsepower pump to change a light bulb when the 2 horsepower pump is the problem that from an energy standpoint.
Oh, you energy auditors are hilarious.
So where contractors can set themselves apart is to actually look at how much energy you could save by changing some of the equipment. Now,
okay, so as a homeowner, it might be worth getting a professional audit by a private contractor as opposed to just the energy freebie that you might get from a utility company if that company is going to provide some more in-depth analysis of where you can save money. And then as a contractor, here's your opportunity to really be of service, right?
Yeah. And then from the homeowner standpoint, if somebody comes in and says that, okay, first things first, we need to replace all the equipment in your boiler room without suggesting that you insulate or that you do some other things that just as far as the envelope of the building is concerned, that should be kind of a red flag, because those from a dollar standpoint are going to be a much quicker payback. There may be, so that definitely there is equipment that's really doing a lot of harm to the environment out there in most homes in America. But from a homeowner standpoint, you want to start with kind of the lower hanging fruit, and most of the time that's just to add more insulation in your attic or something like that.
Okay, so in addition to perhaps upgrading your heating equipment is to do those low cost to implement and high impact items like attic insulation or ceiling doors and windows, etc.
Yeah, that should be where you start.
Excellent.
Unless your house was built in the last 5 years or something like that. But
what do you think, H?
Yeah, I mean, if you want to go beyond that, I think you can probably take, I think Max took some class and learn how to be an energy audit person and get certified, where you can go and do more comprehensive testing, like, go and put a blower door which pressurizes your house and shows where your air leakage is, the infrared cameras. There's more technical stuff if you want to offer, more of a bigger package or more components to the energy audit and also get into commercial work, because again, residential house is one thing, but if you look at a building that's got 20, furnaces or heaters in it, now, that can be turned into a big job both for the energy audit but also for the upgrades and for the improvements. So, I mean, the potential for whatever level that you want to get into it, whether it's your own home or if you want to do this for a living or if you want to get in the commercial side, there's companies out there, they're called ESCOs, which is energy service contract companies, that'll go in and they'll, offer these programs where they'll come in and show you all the place to upgrade your building and then offer to pay some of your fuel costs if you go with their plan like that, because they're convinced that they can save that much energy for you over the cost of the upgrade. So there's a lot of ways to go around this without having to come up with a cash outlay for your customer if they come to you and say, well, yeah, I'd love to do that at my home, but where am I going to get the money to do it? So there's a lot of ways to skin the cat. You just got to get creative and look around your area, see what your market is and what your market needs. If you're in a rural farming community, there's no big industry or big commercial buildings, that might not be an option for you. But
well, Howard, tell me from looking around, I know you travel a lot, what's one of the more interesting energy saving or energy efficiency driven projects that you've come across?
Well, for the business that I'm in, where we do hot water systems, solar thermal systems, we don't do any electric system. It's all solar thermal. So we have to look for opportunities where there's people using a lot of hot water every day. And so we've really focused in on those markets on, where are these jobs that people are using a lot of hot water. And there's some pretty obvious ones, and there were some that weren't so obvious as we started going around and talking to people. Obvious ones are water parks. I mean, a lot of those pools are heated. They've got hotels. They've got laundry rooms. They've got restaurants attached to them. I mean, pretty much every state has at least one, if not multiple, water parks in it. So we're kind of got a little niche market that we're going around to these water parks and making, presentations saying, listen, we can cut your heating bill for these pools and all your domestic water by, 50, 60%. Even we did one up in Michigan. We're looking at one this next week in Wisconsin. So it's not just a warm climate. Technology can work anywhere. And the other big one that we've keyed into is prisons, or I guess the proper word is correctional facilities these days, because they're required to take showers twice a week, I think is what the code is, or the requirement there. So they use a lot of domestic hot water, and unfortunately our prisons are full or overcrowded in most cases, so there's a very consistent load. And what also is happening with a lot of the correctional facilities is they're being run by corporations now. The government's trying to get away from that and get the private industry to take that over, and they're a lot more sensitive to their energy costs than the government was. The government just pays the bill and whatever it is, but when a corporation owns that and has to make money on running these facilities, they're more apt to look at solar hot water systems. So we just finished one up in Indiana, and we've got a bid on a big one out in Nevada going on right now. In fact, the whole state system in Nevada is looking at doing domestic hot water. So I think
those are indeed unusual circumstances that I probably wouldn't have thought of. Hey, listen, guys, I've got a couple more resources that we put up here. Max, I know when we were talking, I said, if you're really into green, what's a good resource? Talk to me about the Earth Policy Institute. And this, as I understand it, is like if you're really into it, this is where you would go for some in-depth information.
Yeah, so this Lester Brown wrote a book, and I think the original one was called Plan B 2.0 or something like that, and then he's since revised it, and I think it's Plan B 4.0 or something like that. But it's really good because he has all sorts of research, and you see from a global standpoint why all of these things are important as far as water conservation and energy conservation, and just kind of the amount of resources that we have left on the world and population and how that affects the amount of food that's left. So if you're kind of a green nerd that wants to read something that has all sorts of really well-researched data behind it that you can see up at the top too, he even has it all online that you can look it up. I think that that's usually a good sign if people are really upfront with their sources, as opposed to when you hear a news story and they don't cite anything, or the information is just from a poll or something like that, it's probably not going to be quite as accurate as something that has all sorts of EPA data factored into it, or hard numbers.
This is a really cool site, and this is a great reference. Hey, Hot Rod, if I were a contractor and I wanted to learn about becoming a more effective auditor, or getting my accreditation to be an auditor, or learning more about the green industry in general, is the Comfort Institute a good place to go? Any other suggestions?
I haven't gone, but from the people that I've talked to that have gone through their courses or attended some of their seminars, they seem to be one of the most progressive, cutting edge places to get that information. So that would be certainly one worth looking at. And again, once you get into it, it's like any industry or job you want to get into, there's always a network. Once you get in, or you get into these chat rooms and you start asking questions, you'll find out, pretty quickly, it's like a consumer report thing, which ones work and which ones don't. So in this electronic age, in this communication age we're into, you should be able to get information almost instantly, or certainly within an hour or two. But from what I can see, they've been around a long time, and I think some of the people involved with that. I think they're a pretty good organization to get some training and get some focus on what you're going to offer, what you're going to do.
Woohoo! Well, you guys, this has been really fun, and I've been learning from you by association for so many years, but it's been a nice opportunity to get to visit with you and ask your opinion about all things green. Any final thoughts or words you want to share before we wrap up today?
No, I would just say, go for it. To set a goal and get some training and get some information, and let us know how you do. There's always somebody out there that's been there and done that before, so just find those people and just go for it.
Woohoo! How about you, Max?
And then I think from the contractor side of it, the most important thing is to have more selling points than just energy efficiency or being green. So to really research how your products, if you're a contractor or a wholesaler or whatever, how they make people more comfortable and that type of thing. So to sell green effectively, I think that you can't just go with it's green as the selling feature. Even on the website that you've got up right there, in the middle it shows hot and cold spots, excessive dust, allergy, and asthma, and the bottom one is excessive heating bills, and these are energy auditors. So those are those are selling features right there that don't necessarily relate to the environmental impact at the beginning.
Nice. All right. Well, you guys rock. Thanks so much for joining us. Hey, if you've got any comments or questions, email me, contact@barebonesbiz.com, or become my Facebook friend at facebook.com/Ellen Rohr. Thanks, Hot Rod. Thanks, Max, for joining me today.
Yeah, all right. Thanks, everybody.
All right. Bye-bye. Go green.
Bye-bye.
Love, love.